Outbound investment.
Okay, so welcome everyone to another exciting episode of the MoonShot Podcast. That is our current iteration of the name till all parties agree upon the name. But for the moment, let's call it MoonShot Podcast. We have a very exciting guest with us today, the one, the only Garrett Lang. So Garrett, for the millions of people watching around the world on various screens, would you like to introduce yourself to them and obviously just kind of share the many so I guess just for I guess context, I've known Garrett for what seems like what seems like forever. Garrett is a very personable person. He's a super connector. He's a tech entrepreneur. He's a giver. He's an entrepreneur. He's a philanthropist to a degree. And there's many other assets and aspects and facets to Garrett, which I'm sure we're gonna get into. But before we really jump straight into it, Garrett, could you, just for the benefit of Josue as well as our audience, could you introduce yourself and give us a nice, juicy view on who you are, and also what excites you in the world?
Sure. So I am a software developer turned software inventor turned serial entrepreneur. I'm also the founder and executive director of the Free Thinker Institute, which is my not-for-profit. When I was in corporate America, I started my career for about 9 years at General Electric. When I left there, I was managing all of the technology other than sales and marketing for a $250 million net income business. And then, when I was in New York, I was managing a 50-person org of everything software development. That was my last role before starting my own company and becoming a serial entrepreneur. That was with PwC and a joint venture with Google, building software in three new industries. I have a couple of strengths. One is like innovative software. I love to invent. I won awards for inventing software. I got my products to number one in the industry and won an award for the most visionary product of the year out of over 30,000 software inventors with PlateRate, which is my for-profit business, my first for-profit business. I also have a profitability consulting firm. And my goal is to help other people. And I like the Zig Ziglar quote, which is, if you help enough people achieve their goals, you'll end up achieving your goals as well. So I butchered it, but it's a good quote.
I like it.
Well, with that being said, Lang, that's a wonderful introduction with a solid background and based on great values. I love that quote as well.
Great. Yeah, and I come up with little quotes myself. I always liked quotes enough that when I was a kid I would read Bartlett's Familiar Quotations at my parents' house, and they saw me reading it so much that they bought me my own version. It's this, huge tome, and I literally was reading it from cover to cover. I didn't get through the whole thing, but I went through, more or less a lot of the ancient quotes from ancient China and Greco-Roman times and now I come up with my own quotes, and so that's part of like I've been posting on LinkedIn about different quotes that I've come up with and why I think they will add value to people's lives and are important in our daily life. And one is, if we don't help each other, who's going to help us, right? And when you say it that way, it's so obvious. We need to help each other, because if we don't, no one's going to end up helping us. And so even if you're just looking at your own needs, you have to help other people, because if you don't, there's not going to be anyone there to help you when you need it. And we all, somewhere in our lives, we all are going to need help.
It sounds not to play devil's ad or I'll play devil's advocate, so to
Please
speak.
do.
That when you say those words, they sound really nice, but then you attach the human element to it, and it can get
Yeah.
pretty, pretty nasty sometimes. But in principle, it's wonderful, right? If we could do that.
Well, what I'm trying to do with the Free Thinker Institute is create a community of people that have common values. And I'll go over those values real quickly. The first one is to be the best version of ourselves, to seek truth and to be fair. The second is to transparently share, which is our North Star and like what we're striving for. The second and third are about thoughts. We want to share our beliefs with other people transparently to the extent we trust them, and then listen to them with an open mind if they have a better path forward for us. And then third, we want to improve our critical thinking skills, which is to better discern fact from fiction and wisdom from folly. those improve our thought processes. And with better thought processes, we see the truth more clearly. Then we want to prevent significant unnecessary harm from happening to any human being, full stop, whenever we can influence it, and opportunistically increase happiness and decrease harm in the world. And then the fifth is an eagerness to give, receive, and reciprocate love. Fifth, because you have to give and receive love to the right person in the right way. Platonic love as well as romantic, by the way. So, and essentially, what I'm trying to do is create a community of people who value those things. And amongst our community, we are givers, right? And we all help each other, we support each other, and people like us need to stick together because if we do, we're way more powerful. And there was a great picture that I saw that said, once people understand this, it'll change the world. And it was a bunch of little fish with like shaped as a gigantic fish about to swallow a shark. And I was like, yeah, if we all stay united fighting for a better world, then we can defeat the sharks of the world. And, I actually often say with plate rate, we're a dolphin swimming in a sea of sharks because there's all of my competitors are very unethical and want the most money that they can get. And we're giving, giving, giving to everybody.
I love the philosophy because I guess, and where's that deep rooted belief that this is the way?
So it comes from hundreds of hours of, thank you. It comes from hundreds of hours of discussing. Those things that I just described are what we call the five intentions of the Free Thinker Institute and the common values. And I tried for hundreds of hours of conversation with people, like philosophical friends, to come up with five values that were ironclad. That, they're in priority order, by the way, so there can be a conflict between the different ones. When there's a conflict, the first one wins, the earlier one wins. And I wanted to come up with five simple rules that anyone could follow to live a more ethical and happy life. And what I can say is that people in the not-for-profit have been telling me that as they use these five intentions in their life, it's helped them live more happily and it's helped them be a better person and also increase happiness for themselves and the people they can influence.
Now, here's again playing devil's advocate, even though
Of
I
course.
love what you're saying, is the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah, so that saying, I used to misunderstand that. I used to think that what that means is that you shouldn't have good intentions or you're going to go to hell. And that doesn't make sense intuitively. So I always hated that quote. Well, a good friend of mine from college, Chris, he described what that quote really means. And what it really means is if your intentions are good, but you don't take action on those intentions, then you are going to go to hell because you may know the right thing, but you're not doing the right thing. And I think there are a lot of us these days that see what the right thing is, but sometimes are afraid to do it. And there are good reasons. There is a lot of encroachment on even free speech that I've been reading about very recently, where a French journalist, for criticizing a public figure, got his electronic devices taken and got sent home just for criticizing a public figure in America. I would never have thought in my lifetime something like that would happen. And, that is going to make some people afraid. It's not going to make me afraid, but it'll make some people afraid. And I don't think it should make any of us afraid because if we all continue to speak our truth, then I think we're stronger together and we have to be that one big fish.
I guess rooted in a lot of that is the fear of loss, especially if you're, let's say that you worked hard to build your business, build a certain lifestyle, and you rock the boat, and let's say it's challenging the powers of influence, right? Let's say you're a small startup and you're going up, let's say a behemoth like Google or Microsoft, and let's say you walk into their market, right? You could be crushed, or they can approach you and be like, hey, I'll just buy you out and you can go away, or they can litigate you to all of these things that you can face, right? So a lot of times it's easier to play it safe.
So it sometimes feels easier to play it safe in the short run, but I would argue, and I have a quote for this, shortcuts are long cuts. And what I mean by that is when you take what you think is a shortcut, it usually ends up being a longer journey than actually doing it the right way in the first place. And I think we all need to, follow what our hearts and minds say. And I have a four blocker for this. If your heart and mind agree, you should always do it. If your heart agrees and your mind doesn't agree, you should do it if you have the resources. If your mind agrees and your heart doesn't agree, you should do it if you have, you should, I forget that corner, but then obviously if neither one agree, then don't do it. And, yeah, anyone can ask me for that and I'll share it
Yeah,
publicly.
send me the template for that because
Yeah, I'll do
I
that.
think that's one of those that I can see posted in every work space as a reminder of having the intuitive decision making ability to say it's okay for me to make a decision on this. And so oftentimes, because of policy, people refrain from giving that little extra that in the long run, like just like you said, the shortcuts
Yep,
are the long cuts that hurt the company or the
exactly.
organization.
Exactly
So
right.
I
And
think
so
those
often
two
people take those
together,
shortcuts. Yep. So
yeah,
often people take those shortcuts. And I pulled it up. It's if your mind agrees and your heart doesn't, you should do it if you're obligated. There's where you should do it if there's an obligation to get it done.
good stuff.
Yeah, really good.
Refreshing.
So, Garrett, I guess just for our audience who may not be as familiar with you, can you maybe just share with them, Plate Trade's mission, uh,
Yeah.
but also more importantly, the why. Like, why did you
Yes.
do it?
So happy to do that, Rajiv. So Plate Rates missions, we have two missions, one for the diner. We're an online ordering system, so pick up and delivery today. We're an online ordering system. We basically get diners a lot of free food to try the top-rated menu items at a restaurant. So we create drastically higher loyalty between the diner and the restaurant, which is, we get the diner better food, the restaurant gets more loyalty. So it's a win-win, and I like to say where there's a win-win, I'm in. Now, we want to our two missions are one, to create the ultimate dining experience for the consumer. So they're getting better tasting food at the type of restaurant they want to go to. The second is to make hospitality companies as profitable as possible. And we want to do that in a way that's win-win between the restaurant, the diner, and us. And we have created the ability to do that in a way that uses an innovative business model as well as innovative capabilities, some of which have been copied, but no one has anything nearly as powerful as what we have because the ideas that were copied one at a time. We have everything under one roof. And um, the idea behind giving as much as we can to the diner and the restaurant so that we actually don't charge the diner or the restaurant anything and we do make money. I can't talk about the exact because that's our part of our innovative business model, but um, we don't cost the diner or the restaurant anything. And by doing that, we're more generous with the diner and the restaurant. We also have the lowest margins in the industry, which I'm very proud of. And the reason I'm proud of that is because I advocate for what I call generous capitalism. What generous capitalism means is that we as a business want to be more generous with our customers, which is the diners. The suppliers, theoretically, in our case, is really the restaurants because we're a two-sided marketplace. They're supplying the food and drinks, and the great hospitality. And then, we want to also treat our employees really well. And so we have a really high win-win commission structure for sales and customer solutions people. But it's all structured in a win-win way. We if money is not made, nobody makes money. If money is made in a big way, everybody makes money in a very big way. And so generous capitalism is about being more generous with everybody. And once the company is profitable, that will include our community because we'll have extra revenue that we'll put into helping the community. And by being more generous with everyone, we believe that we will actually be more successful. And there have been examples of companies that did this. I'll go to that in a second. But the reason that we think we'll be more successful is I've asked hundreds of people, would you rather do business with a generous company or a greedy one? And I call what we're in today greedy capitalism because every company wants the most that they can get for themselves. And that's why there's a lot of hate towards capitalism. But I don't think that what we're in now is late stage capitalism. Marx thought it was. I think he was wrong, and that's a bold claim, but I do think he was wrong. A lot of people think he was wrong, but I think he was wrong in a slightly different way. I think late stage capitalism is generous capitalism. It's where companies are giving so much that, you can't survive as a business unless you're giving. And if that were the case, think about how much better life would be if all of our companies we're giving to everybody and sharing the wealth with everybody involved. We would live in a much different world. And that world is very possible if everybody votes with their wallets. If people say, look, I'd rather work for Plate Rate, I'd rather, buy food from Plate Rate, I'd rather work with restaurants that work with Plate Rate, and restaurants say they'd rather work with Plate Rate. Guess what? Plate Rate's going to be really big very quickly. And we are seeing a lot of growth right now. So um, that's really what generous capitalism is about. Two companies that are already kind of doing this and not under the banner of generous capitalism, which is a term I'm trying to coin. But Costco, very good to their suppliers, their employees, their customers. They charge the least amount that they can to make their numbers to consumers. So they really try to give to everybody in the ecosystem. And Patagonia is very similar, very ethical companies.
Hmm. Interesting. So I think that's like a great jumping off point because Josue, I mean, I know you don't like to talk about your companies too much, but I mean, I think there's something that Garrett mentioned in Play Trade that kind of resonates a little bit, in my opinion, with what you're doing with one of your companies, right? Because it's about kind of like giving back the ecosystem and being, well, kind to the environment, but also kind to the customer. Yeah, do you want to like maybe touch on that briefly, Josue?
A lot of this is the philosophies of doing right by people and doing it with integrity, where you have a clean heart, but it makes logical sense to your business because you understand that you have to have a profit, right? In a sense, it's not directed with the profit motive, which is you could say greedy capitalism, but it's in an ecosystem that's healthy where it's a win-win all the way around. And that's just the way I choose to do business. And the value of creating that philosophy or that integrity, where at times it comes at a loss, but you understand, which to restate your what you said here, that shortcuts become long cuts. So that short-term loss, but in the long sense, it creates a trend of the way you conduct business.
Yeah.
Everything you're saying resonates. I love your philosophy. You gave some great examples on kind of where you want to hitch your business, right? Which is to businesses like Costco and Patagonia. And from there, create a movement of being a generalist capitalism. I love those two terms.
Thank you.
And in whatever way we can participate, I'll start using that in my business. I'm gonna borrow that from you.
Thank you. Please do. Call it a generous capitalist business if it is. And by the way, it's really good for stocks. Look at Costco's stock over the last, 5, 10, 15 years. Their stock has gone incredibly high. And so it shows that generous capitalism is good for business.
And I guess it's just shifting that mindset because most of the mindset on Wall Street, it's bringing shareholder value.
Yeah.
Exactly right. And in fact, a generous capitalist business has to be a B Corp legally because if we're not a B Corp and we're publicly owned, our duty, according to the law, is towards shareholders. But if you're a B Corp, you no longer have that legal obligation. So if you're not a B Corp, you are not even legally allowed to practice generous capitalism because you have to be a greedy capitalist business. So what this will do is it'll have B Corps, and I'm working, by the way, on a certification for a generous capitalist business. I don't have one yet, but we will have one eventually. I'm working in collaboration with the World Ethics Organization, where I'm an advisor on the board of advisors, and I was a key member of building the ethical code, and I built an ethics bot, which we could share with your audience if you're interested. It's a bot, like a ChatGPT bot, that you can ask any question, and it will tell you the ethical way to handle the situation.
Oh, that's amazing. So, Garrett, I'd like to kind of maybe switch gears slightly I
Yeah,
mean, we've spent a lot of time talking about, ideas and intentions and approaches. I'd like to, since part of the mission of the Moonshot podcast is to also, get to know people on a slightly, let's say, deeper personal way.
I
Uh,
like that.
Yeah, so one of the questions I'd like for you to answer is, how do you achieve balance? Like, how do you unwind? How do you achieve downtime? What does that look like? And also, what is the significance that it plays in your either day to day or in your week, whichever way you'd like to look at it?
Yeah, so I'm a pretty like high energy guy, generally speaking. And so but I from an unwind perspective, it's spending time with my kids and my family, or spending time with friends, and it's usually over some sort of deep conversation involving including food and drinks. And I'm a wine hobbyist, and so I took and TA'd the Cornell Wines class. So I love wine. I have a reasonable sized collection, and I have wine buddies, and so I have wine dinners. I created a wine club in my town with my neighbor, who's my wine brother from another mother. And we host these wine events where we have really good wines from our cellars that are often 10, 20. We serve wine from the 90s sometimes because I still have a few bottles left of that, and some even older, to be honest, for a special occasion. So yeah, I like food, drinks, and philosophy go great together for me. They're kind of like three legs of a stool, and I like enjoying those with people who enjoy them as well. And I do host events too, through the FTI in North Jersey and New York City, and so I host food and wine and discussion events 4 times a month minimum, for generally, two in North Jersey and two in New York City. So if anyone wants to get invited to those, just reach out to me on LinkedIn and ask for an invite, and I can send invites over.
Garrett, so I think what you mentioned is great from the standpoint of this is, certainly like a personal endeavor through which you get some enrichment. So that's great. I guess my
Yeah.
question was more so to do with relaxation. Like how
Yeah.
do you kind of
I
pacify
don't
your mind?
relax unless I'm sleeping. Like I
Oh,
don't believe in relaxing. Like for me, like having like wine and talking about a deep intellectual topic is relaxing for me. So I just have, it's funny because since middle school, people have been saying, Garrett, you need to relax. You need to relax. And I kind of came to a point in my life where I'm like, no, I don't need to relax because I don't enjoy relaxing. I feel like I'm wasting my time if I'm relaxing. And for me, I'm very much like about trying to do good in this world, and I don't want to fail for lack of effort. And there have been times in my life where I did, and I still have issues that I'm trying to do the very best that I can to make the world a better place. And I'm going to keep trying at those things, and I'm going to keep doing my best. And I have another saying, which is don't stress, just do your best and accept the rest. And if you don't stress about something, but you know that you need to be on point and give your very best performance, then you have to let go after that. And I live by that rule. And since I came up with that saying and started following it myself, I really don't stress about stuff. Very rarely do I stress about anything. I just know that I'm going to do the best I can at the things that matter to me. And after I've done my best, I can't do better. So why stress about it?
Is there a defining moment where you chose to like to be this way?
Yeah, actually, it was when so I've always had good intentions. I've always wanted to make the world a better place, but I wasn't spending all my spare time doing it. I used to watch TV and play video games, right? And a lot of people still do that. I will say, since starting my company, which actually the story of that was kind of funny. I kept telling my wife, honey, like this person founded this company. I had this idea 10 years ago and I never did it. And eventually she got tired of hearing the stories and she's like, Garrett, just start your own company. You keep telling me these stories, start your own company. And I did, and I've never looked back. And I was so happy I did. I did it in my nights and weekends for a couple of years, and I just enjoyed it so much that I said, this is my future. And it felt like the right thing. If you've ever read the Paulo Coelho book? Trying to remember the name of it,
The
where it's
Alchemist?
what's
Alchemist?
that?
The Alchemist?
Yeah, The Alchemist. So
Yeah.
thank you. I had a good friend in Kansas City give me that book, and I just loved it. And I felt like I have made poor decisions in my life where I went off my path, and video games and TV were one of them. I should have been doing this my whole life, right? Like, but you can't go back. And so I like to tell my kids and anyone that'll listen that the past is only good for two things, either learning from your mistakes or reminiscing. Those are the two uses of the past. If you're doing anything else, beating yourself up, especially, not a useful way to think about the past. unless you're not learning the lessons. If you think beating yourself up is going to teach you the lessons, try just learning the lessons without the beating up part. It's much better.
You were with obviously a Fortune 500 big corporate company like GE, big teams, big dollar values.
Oh yeah.
You still
It all
walked
felt
away.
like funny money. Like it'd be like, oh, here's $200 million this month, like coming in, and the numbers were just huge, right? Like when I was like 22, I was saving over $20 million a year conservatively from a project I did in 6 months. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I felt like I did.
You didn't. You elaborated on it. But going back to the question, what was still that draw? I know the wife can have an influence
Yeah.
in
Well,
setting you straight.
I don't even know if she realizes how much of a positive impact that had on my life, because once I started my own company, I lost all interest in video games and anything on TV. I don't even watch movies. I only watch a movie if I'm watching it with my kids because they go, Daddy, I want to watch this movie with you. Then I'll do it, right? Because I'll do just about anything for my kids. But like I just I just realized that I was wasting all that time on things that were diversions, and I wanted to focus on the important stuff. And the important stuff is about building meaningful relationships. It's about adding value to other people's lives and being a positive influence on them, and letting other people be a positive influence on me. I've learned as much as I've taught, and I like to say that my favorite things to do are to learn and to teach. And I've been lucky enough that I've done both of those things for my whole career, and I got paid well to do it. But now I'm trying to do it at another level and on a more independent level, because I was always limited on what I can learn and who I could teach by my management. And some management had everyone's best interests at heart, and some management were greedy capitalists and egotists. And I wanted to get away from that egotism and come from a place of humility and saying we're all imperfect. And as imperfect people, let's help each other improve. And I want to create a peer coaching and mentoring group. And I've created a peer coaching and mentoring group in the FTI. We have a membership, and basically we coach each other, we help each other, we share our challenges, and we give each other advice. And it's been really meaningful to a lot of the members, and they say it almost every week how much they appreciate the group. So it's been fun.
Rajiv, you want to?
No, no, I mean the thing is like it's almost like I hate to say this, but it's almost like Garrett is like a human interpretation of like a very knowledge-filled bot. Every single damn thing he's dropping is freaking wisdom. And I'm like, dang, like how does this guy even do this? What level of like, I don't know, evolution you gotta be at to reach to where Garrett's at? Because like every single thing is just so freaking thoughtful and deep, and yeah, I don't know. It's amazing. Like one of my reactions is almost like to me it seems unfathomable for anyone to be upset at you or to be
Oh,
vehement.
people do get mad. I actually butt heads with egotists like really quickly, because what I do is I look for logical consistency and good reasons for doing things. And if someone doesn't have a good reason, I go, "Oh, why do you think that?" And I'll start asking questions. And if someone's an egotist, they're going to get very uncomfortable with those questions because they don't have good answers for them. And I will very clearly bring to light that they don't have good answers for those questions, and then they get really mad at me. So I like to say, if you don't have a few enemies in this world, you haven't yet done enough good yet. So, like
I
you're
love
always
that.
going to have enemies. I don't want to have enemies. I don't dislike anyone. I care about every human being on this earth. That doesn't mean I want to spend time with every human being on this earth, because some of them I've tried to help and then they just got more mad at me. And that's usually from egotism, at least in my last 4 or 5 years, I would say. In the past, I used to have like poor ways of trying to influence people. I used to use what I now call the logic hammer, right? I would say, you're wrong, I'm right, and this is why. And even if I gave good logical reasons, they just got mad at me. And that's not the way to convince someone, right? The way to convince someone is by asking questions. If you ask thoughtful, inquisitive questions and someone is not an egotist, they will realize why they're wrong if you ask good enough questions, and it'll be from them, not from me. I don't have to tell them they're wrong. They're going to say, oh, wait, I think I had a misunderstanding here. And you know what? People do the same thing to me. And I'll tell you, you're saying how wise I might be, but I'll tell you, I learn from people who hate my guts, and I learn from my kids all the time. You know, my daughters taught me that sharks are afraid of dolphins. I had no idea.
No, it's true. They
And
are.
so, yeah, it is
Yeah.
true. Like, because they
Because
can
dolphins
bludgeon them to
attack
death
sharks.
with their
True.
noses.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I had
exactly.
no idea. And so, I tell my girls that learning knowledge and wisdom is why we're on this earth. And I think we're all here to learn knowledge and wisdom and for spiritual development. And I can logically defend that I did in my Freethinker Institute session on reincarnation, which has been, peer reviewed by science and largely proven to be true. For those that don't believe it, I'm going to be doing a better version of that talk in the next couple of months, where I review the peer-reviewed research and then I give an a priori or a logical argument for defending that we reincarnate. And if we do reincarnate, then what's our purpose here? It's to learn. It's to become better versions of ourselves. So that's why that's part of the North Star of the FTI is to be a better version of ourselves. And we're all on that journey, whether we like it or not, whether we want to or not. And the enemy in that journey is egotism. It's wanting what we want instead of what's best for all. It's when we give and what we do what's best for all, that we become happier. We feel happier. And in fact, we build relationships of people who want us to be happy because we've done good things for them. I met an egotist once, a self-prescribed egoist, he called himself. And I said, look, from your perspective, you want what's best for you, right? He goes, yeah. I said, well, do you think that if you're nice to other people and you do good things for them, that they're more likely to do nice things for you? And therefore, your winning strategy as an egoist is to be an altruist and give to other people. He goes, yeah, I agree with that. And so even an egoist would agree that the right path for everybody is to be an altruist. And if you want what's best for you, give to others. And then what's best to you is going to come. Don't give to the point where you've given up your physical and mental health and well-being. You have to take care of yourself. And some people are so giving, and I know people like this, that they've given their bodies not in that way, but like in the way of like working themselves to death, right? To help others. And
Yeah.
now the body is suffering from it and they have physical problems because of it. And that's not good either. So there has to be a balance. I like the Buddhist path of the middle road, right? There's always a middle road, and the middle road is where we should be. When you're at the extremes of either end, it's usually, the extremes are extremely dangerous, is what I like to say. So, yeah, sorry if I talked a lot.
Well, I'll just say this, that there are those that say is get rid of the ego. My question is, why does the ego exist to begin with?
So you don't
Why?
want to get rid of, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, it's a very prominent sense of our being, right? Our id, our ego, and our super ego. And
Yeah.
oftentimes it dominates, and so it's there for a reason.
Yeah, so I'm not saying to get rid of the ego, and I don't think we can. I think the whole idea of an ego death is either, so I think if I sat down with a Buddhist monk, which is what I did when I learned about non-attachment, I thought it just didn't make sense. And when I hear about ego death, what ego means is a sense of self. To think of an ego death means we no longer have the sense that I am Garrett. I would no longer have the sense that I am Garrett. That doesn't make sense. What does make sense is the death of egotism. And to distinguish between ego and egotism, ego is a sense of self. Egotism is saying, I want what's in my best interest, come hell or high water, even if it screws over other people. And egotism is about wanting to be right instead of learn a better truth. And I like to say to help people combat their egotism is, you know, if you admit you're wrong with good judgment, you're immediately right again. You're more right than you were before. And the only time you're ever truly wrong is when it's clear to everyone around you you're wrong and you still refuse to admit it.
Mm.
So,
Dang.
so in essence, you're for the ego, but a healthy, well-balanced ego.
Exactly. We all have a sense of self, and I don't think anyone has no sense of self. So, ego death really, I think, should be called egotism death. And I do think we should kill our egotism. I actually made a pretty good argument, I think, in the FTI, and this is on our YouTube channel, on the Freethinker Institute YouTube channel, about why egotism is the root cause of all preventable evil on earth. Literally, the root cause of everything bad. Every significant unnecessary harm that happens to any human being originates in egotism.
In your library on YouTube, do you have a lot of philosophical texts?
Yes, I try to keep it practical philosophy. There are some things that are 100% theoretical and some things that I thought were 100% theoretical and I later learned actually have practical implications. An example of that is I give an argument defending what's called libertarian free will, meaning that we get to make a decision and that the laws of physics are not what make our decision for us, that we actually have uh, uh, the ability to make what's called a non-deterministic decision, meaning a decision that the laws of physics are not making for us. That's actually a very minority opinion, and most of the people who believe it are religious, and I'm not religious, but I think I have a very good secular argument that we have libertarian free will. And if that's true, there are actually down the road, downstream, levels to that argument that basically help me defend karma, that we do have karma, and that what you do, you put out into the world comes back to you. And same life karma, I call it, is irrefutable. And anyone who thinks there's no same life karma, I will challenge them to walk around every day or for one day and just absolutely insult the best way you can every human being you talk to. And if you don't get a lot of negativity back for putting out that negativity, I'll give you $100.
So
You
put
have to
out good
prove it
stuff.
though.
Put out the good stuff.
Put out the good stuff, and good stuff will come back to you. And when people send you negativity, ask them if you can help them. Someone putting out negativity has something going wrong with them. And, like those people need help. They don't need to be negativity to be reflected back, right? And another saying that I have is when someone is negative towards you, it comes in decreasing probability from reflection, where someone was negative towards you and you're being negative back, deflection, where someone was negative towards you and now you're negative towards someone else, projection, where you have your own negativity and you're projecting it onto someone else, misunderstanding where you just don't understand what's going on clearly and you're being negative as a result of that. And then lastly, and always be open that someone's negativity towards you could be this, an accurate reflection of your flaw. And if you don't put out negativity, you get the idea about how you can prevent each one of those.
It sounds like a room full of mirrors.
Yeah, well, there it can be sometimes, and people often live internally so much, and I'm talking a lot here, which I don't normally do, but I guess I'm your guest, so I hope I'm allowed to do that. But I think people like to talk about themselves, like everybody does, and this is from Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, and I learned that there, and I was like, oh my God, yeah, everybody likes to talk about themselves. So
Here's the thing. Now they're looking at, right? Let's say that we're having a discussion with a therapist, and in the past, it was just let the person talk out their problems, and that there's been a change. Not to say that we're having therapy here. Maybe we
no,
are.
I
yeah.
mean, it could be
Well,
cathartic
Healthy
to
therapy.
there's a thing called working meditation in Buddhism. This is life therapy, right? Like, I hope that we both learn from each other in this exchange. And so that's a form of therapy, but you don't have to pay for it, right? We're just like friends here talking and cool, like free therapy.
Going back to my point that the change has
Yeah,
been that you just don't let the person carry on because they get to nowhere or they go deeper into the issue that they're trying to address. So it doesn't create any healing. It
correct.
just reinforces it, relives it, revalidates it. So the new approach is to interrupt and to get them off that that
I
that
think
pattern.
I did not know that, but I think that's a very good step forward. And I've never liked the idea that you should just hear someone out and not offer any advice. You know, I always try to offer advice that'll be helpful to people. And sometimes they will snap at me. I didn't ask you for your opinion. I didn't ask you for your advice. Okay, I'll never give you advice again. No problem. But by the way, if you ever want to give me advice, I'm very open to it because if it helps me, I think that's a good thing. And I don't say that right back to them because that would be snarky. And I do sometimes come across as snarky, not intentionally, but I do think that we should all be open to advice. That's why the second intention is to have an open mind to what other people tell us. And even if someone gives us advice in a poor way, like they may be rude about it, but always listen. If there's a nugget of truth of what they're saying, we can learn from that, right? And it's good to learn from everybody, even the people that don't like us. And why do they not like us, right? And I've been learning from like my conflicts with people with egotism to try to back down a little bit earlier and try to ask softer questions because I don't want anyone to dislike me, right? No one wants to be disliked, some people will stand proud and say, I don't mind being disliked, but in our hearts, none of us want to be disliked. But, I would rather be disliked and find out whether or not someone's an egotist. And so there's a balance to be found there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and in fact, Garrett, there's like many things that you said that just like resonate with me on a very deep level. One of which is it's almost like we create our own reality that's shaped by our own thoughts. So one illustration to this is like, me and this other friend of mine, we sometimes joke around like, I'm talking about Joel at Dynamite Networking Group, and we often sometimes just in friendly sort of jest, we say, I live in the Bronx, the nice part of the Bronx. And we kind of just like joke about it. But the point is that, because of, I guess, how I think and my intention and approach to life, wherever I go is just like beautiful, serene, picturesque, peaceful. And not once in my 5, 6 years of living in the Bronx have I had a negative experience. Even if I've
Mhm.
gone seeking out a negative experience, never had one. I'll give you an example. You might be
Yeah.
like, what's wrong with this guy? I mean, like, I'm very drawn to conflict. And by conflict, I mean like people fighting with each other, screaming at each other, cussing at each other. I'm very drawn to that. By drawn, I mean like I find that fascinating. Okay, which is why you'll see me if you go through my search history, you'll see like, fights on the 6 train, fights on the 2 train,
You got
fights.
Rajiv here in the background on all these photos of the people fighting.
Yeah, so the point is like all this kind of like sort of conflict I find very entertaining because it's almost like you're seeing people at their worst, but you're also seeing people as they really are, to a degree. And it's just being amplified, obviously, because it's a conflict. So I'm like very, I guess, drawn to this like human condition of a degree, a certain aspect of this human condition. And I do like to see it as an observer, as a voyeur, even because I find I find this very entertaining. But I again now you might be thinking like, what's wrong with this dude? But the thing is like, despite my intention of seeking enjoyment from these strange things, not once have I ever seen any kind of altercation ever in my 6 years of living in the Bronx. I will say that other people who live either in the same neighborhood as me or maybe even just one street over. So in the same neighborhood, they might have a completely different life experience than me in the same time that I'm talking about. While I'm complaining that I've never seen anything bad, they're complaining about how terrible life is and how somebody threw a rock at them or how somebody spat in their face or how something got stolen from them, how they got mugged or whatever, So the point is, where I'm going with this is that I think your perception of life and what you're expecting life to be is going to shape your reality. And maybe this is a little too meta or whatever, but I think our thoughts and intentions do take shape and do manifest in our reality, and we do, experience life as such. So I think part of what you're saying, Garrett, is, does correlate to that, because if you're like super negative, you're like creating this almost void, or you're creating this energy or intensity of negativity, which is obviously looking for a way back in because it's a flow, a give and
Mhm.
take is a flow. So when you're putting out negativity, you're obviously going to get back negativity. So by the same token, if you're putting out positivity, you're going to get back positively, So that's just how I see these two correlate. Josue, it looks like you're about to say something, so please.
I think a lot of it is first of all what we give, the meaning we give to things, right?
Right.
And socially and culturally, a lot of times we're these meanings are thrown on us, like the terms positivity and negativity. Who says that negativity has to be bad?
Mm,
It could just be feedback,
mm.
a form of feedback. And when we just project ourselves to look at it in a way that is not constructive,
Mm,
because it can be, that negativity can be constructive. It's feedback.
exactly.
And if we just redefine what those terms mean, we expand our knowledge and understanding and our influence and our ability to respond to those situations.
Yeah, I mean, as you were saying that, Josue, I was thinking about, magnetism, right? In a magnet, you have a positive pole and a negative pole, right? So if you think about it from that simple metaphor, both are required because without the two, you actually can't have two magnets coming together because like poles repel each other, you
Or a
know?
good example to say is the North Pole is good, the South Pole is bad. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't make any sense at all. And yeah, I mean, I think it's very interesting, what you said about like what is negative. It's just like,
Feedback.
yeah, it's feedback, but it's also like a difference, you know? And like if you look at magnetism, it's that difference is required for things to work, at least as far as the principle of magnetism works. I think that's physics. But
And we
also,
can
like you said, feedback, I think it's the two cannot work without each other because if you're giving feedback to someone, you're essentially inserting a new thought that's different than the message that came in, which you're responding to. And it's only in that difference that do you really kind of see the importance of it and for the other to recognize the significance of it, if you think about it from that point of view as well.
and, and we can look at it from this perspective as well. We hear the terms yin and yang.
Mm.
Which one is positive, which one is negative, which one's feminine, which one is masculine, which one's good, which one is bad.
Yeah, I don't know that masculine or feminine makes good or bad, but there's a good story, a Native American story between two about a fight between two wolves. A grandfather is telling his grandson, "Inside me, there's a battle between two wolves. One is got anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, lies, false pride, and ego." I think he means egotism, by the way. The other wolf embodies positive qualities like joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. And then the grandson says, "But grandpa, which one will win?" And the grandpa says, "The one you feed the most."
Mm.
And
Yeah.
that's where I say that level of positivity, while I agree with you, Josue, that someone may perceive feedback as negativity, it's really not. And there's a great Buddhist quote that says, treat a person who points out your flaws accurately as if they've revealed a cache of hidden treasure. Because that person has, it's actually more scary for someone to give feedback than to get feedback. So that person has taken a risk on giving you that feedback. And to be honest, even if they don't do it nicely, it's always good to listen to it. And in fact, in the Free Thinker Institute, we have a curriculum of a bunch of videos, one of which is how to give and receive feedback, which I think explains how to do it much better than the way it's typically done. And you'll get people to listen to your feedback more if you do it the FTI way. And there's no cost for membership at this point. In fact, it
And as you were saying that, Garrett, there was something I think I saw a TikTok on it on Mike Tyson saying this, and maybe somebody else said it before Mike Tyson, but yeah, like, Mike Tyson is more memorable, well, because he's Mike Tyson, right?
yeah,
And
he's
I
got a
think,
way with words, actually.
all
So
right,
for a
so
guy that's been hit in the face so much, he's got a good way with words.
the
Everyone has a plan
platform
until they
creates
get punched in the face, right? Like,
Yeah, exactly. So he's one of the things that he said is that not everyone that fights you or disagrees with you is your enemy, and the converse is true. Not everyone that helps you is your friend. So
yeah,
it's just a very profound way of like looking at it because we're so wired to think that somebody that's going against us is like our enemy, when in fact that person could be your biggest asset or your biggest
exactly.
advocate because they're trying so hard to bring light to something that could potentially change your life. But if you're blinded by arrogance or egotism or whatever, you're going to just see it in a very narrow view as opposed to the broad view that this person is trying to actually add to you and not take from you.
Exactly. Which is why, even though I say I have conflict with people that are egotistical, that doesn't mean that that's okay, right? That's why I'm looking to improve and not really, to learn that they're an egotist without them realizing that I even know and, and be subtle about it and not upset them. Because once I've upset them, I can't influence them in a positive way anymore, right?
Right.
So at that point, I've failed to be the best version of myself. If I want to be the best version of myself, I can ask the questions in a non-confrontational way, in a subtle way, and that's not my strength. Subtlety is not my strength, but I'm working on it, right? This is one of the things that I haven't accomplished yet. And that's, by the way, negativity and positivity, you notice we don't use in the FTI. We say prevent significant unnecessary harm and increase happiness and decrease harm. And by happiness, we mean help people achieve their goals that are not causing significant unnecessary harm.
It's like everything we've talked about today, I would call it a cosmic evolutionary experience that we're all going through. And as we evolve with wisdom, we see reflections of those things that stand out to us that can guide us and lead us in a direction that we need to. Even those things that we may call the negative, to say, this is what I don't want to be, right? As an example, or this is not the direction I wish to go. Let me change course. And we need those guiding stars to
Yep,
lead us in our evolutionary cosmic journey.
I agree.
It's
Yeah,
all
yeah.
it's a learning experience. We're here to learn
I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah,
and take all
absolutely.
the
And I think, this is probably a great time to kind of like pause the conversation. And, Garrett, I think, well, first of all, thanks a ton for stepping away from your very busy schedule. Like you've said before, you're the person that keeps going and going and going. So I know that you're focused on the going and achieving and, making the last moment, the next moment better than the last moment and, the ongoing journey that is about. So thank you for giving us some of your time and also so generously sharing your wisdom with us and our audience. So thank you for that. And, we'd love to, have you again on the show. Hopefully the next time when we have you, our other co-host, Robert, is going to be with us because he's, very spiritual and a meta himself, which I'm sure, I think that
That'll
you're
resonate
a
with me.
vibe. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm also spiritual, not religious. So, but I can logically defend my spiritual beliefs, whereas like most people who are spiritual are blind faith spiritual, and I have no blind faith. I believe what I can logically defend. I just think I can logically defend spirituality, which I know is a bold claim. We could talk about that another time if you want.
Yeah, yeah, no, we will. I mean, I think that's a great point to jump off to kind of and yeah, because that would be a great way to kind of start like the next conversation. But yeah, but thank you again, Garrett. This has been
Thank
absolutely fantastic. It really has been a very enriching experience, and I'm gonna be listening to the recording myself to catch some of those nuggets that you dropped because some of them are like really powerful.
Thank you. That's very kind of you. And I really appreciate you guys having me on. And I appreciate everyone that listens to this. And I hope, and I appreciate both of your wisdom from the conversation as well. So thank you.
There's different ways that we show our gratitude. Some is we bow or we put our hands together. As a former service member, to demonstrate my respect to you, Garrett, I give you a hand salute.
And I back to you.
Yeah, I like that
If I
too.
wasn't a service member, I still will salute you. I come from a family of service members.
Right
So
on.
my
Me too.
father, my uncle, my grandfather, my great grandfather, all members of the military.
Yeah, me too. My dad,
That's a good hand salute, by the way.
Thank you for your service.
yeah,
My pleasure. Thank you, Garrett. It's been an honor.
Same.
awesome.
Aloha.
Until next time.
Next
Thanks, guys.
time. Bye bye.
Bye bye.